What is up, YouTube? It is Dual Crazy coming at you with one of my very first deck profiles in probably several months. It's been a really long time. I still need to get a brand new camera. I know I'm slacking, hopefully soon. But I decided because I've been playing this deck, and the last week or so, because I haven't been playing up until this last week, I played this deck at my locals and went 3-1 both nights that I played. This deck is actually really good in my opinion. This new build, um, I feel like I finally have the ratios almost just pretty much perfect. Um, it's not unbeatable by any stretch because it is true Dracos and they do struggle against other decks like Pendulums if you don't play them right. But for the most part, this deck is actually really well rounded. I feel. So we're just gonna jump right into it. My first lineup is going to be, of course, the three masterpieces. I see people run this at 2, and that's great. I like the aspect of having a third because sometimes you go for Draith and then you tag out. You make a masterpiece if you have to as a big booty defense, so it can come in handy. Then I play 3 copies of Majesty Maiden. This card is essentially just a way to easily get out your masterpiece. You just make it one spell or trap, let them try to pop something. You chain, even if she's sent to the graveyard, you still get her effect as long as she was tributed. And a 2300 attack is nothing to scuff at. And then for my one-of monsters, I run 1 Ignis and 1 Draith. I used to have this at 2, but honestly, I realized most of the time my second Draith, I'm either going to go into it with the Draith, and then it was essentially not doing anything after that. So I figured I can always recur it back with Disciples. So 1 Draith and 1 Ignis, Ignis at 1 anyways. They're just kind of a good ratio. And then the new card that a lot of people are actually starting to play now in this format. The 3 copies of Amano Iwata. This card is insane. If you open this card before you do any of your draw shenanigans, Card of Demise, Pot of Duality, Pot of Desires, your opponent can't respond. They can't Ghost Ogre. They can't Ash you. They can't anything. This card's just really, really good, and the fact that it's a common means it's available to pretty much anybody who plays. Into the spell cards. Of course, the 3 diagrams. Yeah, definitely 3 map diagrams because you always want to. Sometimes I'll actually open up with 2 diagrams, and the nice thing about diagram is that even if you open up 2, it's not dead in your hand because you can always activate the first diagram effect, pop something, search off, use the second one, and then if you pop the Draco monster or spell or something like that on the first one, you automatically get a +1 because you can always search out your heritage. And then diagram number 2, you can always pop something else. What's really good is to use this effect to pop your Draith. Gives you a special summon, plus it gives you cannon fodder for your heritage effect. Next up, 3 copies of Terraforming. This card is essentially your 3rd, 4th, or your 4th, 5th, and 6th copy of diagram. It lets you search out. It also helps mill your deck really well because I play 40 card decks or 40 card main deck with no extra, so it's always good to mill this first because it lowers the count on your deck. 3 copies of True Draco Heritage. This is one of your main draw cards. This card's really good, especially if you can combo it with your diagram to get at least, at minimum you're getting a 1 draw off of it, as long as you're popping something that's a Draco. And then the fact that you get an additional tribute summon on top of that, you search out and you get a masterpiece, and then you have a monster in a trap. You can always tutor out with that and make it. And then your Daigusto Emerald of the deck, 3 copies of True Draco Phoenix. This card's really good for keeping your deck from going dead. I don't play Pot of Desires. I know a lot of people will play it in some builds of True Dracos, but I personally don't like it in a deck like this. A deck like Pendulums makes more sense because you pretty much play 3-ofs for about 95% of the deck. This one you do run some 2-ofs and even some 1-ofs, and some of them can be a little bit combo heavy. So that's just how I do it. 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Again, adding cards to your hand, never a bad thing. 3 copies gives you consistency. And yeah, like I said, with mono Wado, have them on the field. You can Pot of Duality without having to worry about getting ashed. Next, I finally upgraded. I was playing 2 copies of this, mostly because I only had 2 copies, but since I finally pulled one from the Kaiba collection, I decided to say screw it. Again, 3 copies of Draco Demise. What's nice is even if you Draco Demise into the second copy, you can always set it and go and use it next turn. Or even in some cases, you can kind of use it as bait so that your opponent thinks you're setting a spell or trap, since Dracos play their spells and traps anyways. They pop it, then you essentially, I mean, it's either going to be a neg for them on their turn or a plus for you on yours. Onto the traps. Of course, 3 copies of... This is my favorite card of the deck. This card, if you leave it on the field, will screw you so hard if you're going against me. Because I can, as long as I have something to pop with this card, I am always going to pop something and cut your monster's attack in half. And because of the fact it's a continuous, it's not just for the turn. If you're attacking me with a Crystal Wing, like somebody did, I literally cut that attack down to 187 because it was up the entire time. He could not out it. I don't remember how or why. It was just amazing. And then the 1-of for the return. This card, most of the time, I'm just going to tribute it immediately. Every once in a while, I will use the Monster Reborn effect because sometimes it's nice to have that and make Masterpiece from that because you don't waste your normal summon. Especially if you don't happen to have a Disciples or a Heritage to give me that extra normal summon. 2 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. This one's really potent against the Pendulum matchup because you play this, set them, as soon as they activate this, and they can't activate their spells. They essentially have a dead deck until they can out it. Then I have 2 copies of Solemn Strike and the 1 copy of Solemn Warning. This card actually won me my match last night in round 4, going against I believe it was Zombie Lightsworn. Because I think he put up a, I think it was a Gozuki, and he tried to use the effect. And I saw him warning it, and the rest of his hand was completely dead because I think he had like 2 wolves in it. And then I think next turn I made my first Masterpiece, and then he didn't have much of a hand after that. And I was able to make a second Masterpiece, oddly enough, with 2 spell cards, which is almost never done. It didn't matter because he didn't have anything to defend, so I just went for game. And then 1 Imperial Order and 1 Skill Drain. If you can get Skill Drain off after you've made your Masterpiece with a trap, your opponent cannot out anything. They have to get rid of this to even be able to have a chance. And it's just a really, really good card. Some people cite it. I kind of like to main it because you never know when it's going to come in handy. Because sometimes you can just get it and it shuts off monster effects like Superconductor when you activate it. Unless they have a way to out this, it's going to shut down his effect, his flip, which can come in real handy because most of the time if you're trying to make a monster, unless you're making a Masterpiece, he's really hard to get over. And of course, like I said, that's a 40-card main deck. Now my side deck, I'm running 2 copies of Ash Blossom. If I were to get a 3rd copy, like an extra 3rd copy, I might run a 3rd copy because Ash Blossom, even though it's not as potent as it was, it's still a really good card to have in your deck to side in against stuff like Pendulum matchups, or any deck that heavily searches or special summons from the deck. 3 copies of Droll Unlock. This card's probably even better than Ash Blossom in a lot of cases. You play this in the Pendulum matchup after your opponent makes an Electromite and they search, shuts down the rest of their searches for the turn. And if they haven't if they don't have any other skills they can set or anything else they can do, they pretty much have to pass. 2 copies of Zaphion. This was more for the matchups against people that play back row heavy decks like Paleo. My locals, we don't really have anybody that plays heavy back row, but I figure having these in my deck is probably still a good idea in case I do ever go against somebody who shows up with one. The one Yamasil, and then the one Regeki in the Dark Hole, your board wipes. I mean, what else can you say about board wipes? Side deck 2 Cosmic Cyclones. I was main decking these. And then I realized, unless you're playing against a Pendulum matchup, because of the fact you play so many spells, your spell cards that pop, you really don't need the Cosmic Cyclones main deck unless you're playing Pendulums, because even if they're, when you tribute them off, they're going to get their effects. Or even if you don't get their effects and they get popped, they still go off and clear some of your opponent's back row. So that's why I side decked them. And then, of course, the 3 D barriers, because D barrier is still one of the best trap cards in the format, especially against the Pendulum matchup. You set this as soon as they set their skills, flip it, call Pendulums, and they're going to pretty much have to pass return. But that is my true Draco deck profile. Like I said, I played it this yesterday and this past Thursday. Went 3-1. Yesterday, my only loss was to a really weird combo zombie light sworn predaplant kind of build deck, and it was just so all over the place. It made it really hard for me to actually figure out what to counter or how to counter. And then I think my last Thursday was to, I forget what it was. It was a really close match though, because we went 1-1 and he took game 3 because he essentially dismantled my entire hand. But that is my deck profile. This is Dual Crazy signing.